So, I am very invested in my clients' ability to get the word out to their potential clients. And I know these clients, they're doing great work. They do benefit their customers. So I think it's refreshing, I think is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And in a world without advertising is a world where there's no new products in some ways, right? You just have stasis because you just have the incumbent products, have all the money, spend it on, buying customers in other ways. And you won't have opportunities for new products to come to market and say, hey, we're better than this incumbent. And here's our case. And I think that's what an advertisement is. It's a platform that lets these businesses make their case as to why their product is better than the incumbent or why their product is, potentially solves a new problem or solves a problem in a new way that people hadn't imagined before.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everybody. This is Mark Verbenkov, and welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. And we are on episode number 166. And as you can see, or rather not see, my video is not going to be up today. I am back in El Salvador to do a final check before doing a move down here. It's kind of a part-time living situation. So no video today from me, but we have an excellent discussion today looking at the future of advertising with what I would say is a very intelligent and very knowledgeable guest, which I will get into in a minute. So I'm not going to do too much of a pre-intro. It's a little bit hard to move an entire podcast studio overseas when you're just down here for 10, 14 days or so. But we do focus not just on the future of advertising, and this is actually one of the things that I like the most about this episode today. We actually look at some of the history of advertising, and as it is one of kind of the older professions that human beings have been doing for a long time, and my guest does a great job of explaining how kind of natural or organic advertising actually is. As you'll hear me mentioning in the podcast, I think many of us, myself included, think about advertising as, Facebook, Twitter ads, Google ads, a lot of these online advertising ways that we do nowadays. But my guest does a great job of explaining how natural and organic and old and kind of, natural, I think is the best term, advertising is for all of us, which I really think sets the context for the rest of the episode, which is all about how, of course, artificial intelligence is and will be changing advertising. We do focus on how the advertising jobs are going to be modified and changed, which is, of course, one of my favorite topics on the podcast of all time. And then just look at, the future of advertising as it relates to society and humans in general. So it's really, really interesting episode. Even if you're not interested in advertising, I would just recommend listening to the first 20 minutes to get a better sense of the history of advertising, as I've mentioned. But yeah, just a really interesting episode. And my guest today, Hikari Senju, does a great job of explaining all of these points. So Hikari is the founder and CEO at Omneky. He is a computer science graduate from Harvard University with a passion for technology and design. He founded his first startup called Quick Help, which was an on-demand tutoring app, which he later sold to Yup.com and became their head of growth. During his time at Yup.com, Senju observed inefficiencies in content spending and the potential of AI in advertising, which inspired him to establish the company that he works at today, Omneky, back in 2018. And Hikari's background in computer science, entrepreneurship, and his experience with AI technologies led him to create this very interesting company, which is an AI platform that generates, analyzes, and optimizes personalized ad creatives at scale, which kind of sets up the conversation for how advertising will be changing in the future. So it's a really interesting conversation. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. Thanks again for listening.
Hi there, Hikari. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today. I'm actually personally very much looking forward to this conversation about how AI and advertising are mixing, and kind of what the future of that is going to hold. But I just wanted to welcome you to the podcast, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me and the audience about all these things.
Thank you, Marcus. I'm excited to be here and excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah. So how did you initially get interested in? Now, I guess they're two they have been for a long time, very different spheres, right? Advertising and AI. Were you drawn to one before the other? And was there kind of a natural, organic mix between the two? Was there kind of like an event or something that happened that made you get drawn into one or the other?
Yeah, advertising and AI, it's a great question. AI I got into in college. So I was studying computer science at Harvard, also doing a lot of courses at MIT, and I was taking a course at MIT about a decade ago on AI, and it showed something really generative AI demos, like the precursor to generative adversarial networks, and that got me very excited because my dad's a painter and he's an artist, and so the idea that an AI could be creative, that AI could generate art, is really what drew me into AI initially. The idea of and now we're all playing around with it every day. It's so fun, right? Having prompted AI to generate artwork. I mean, but that was what really got me into AI. And then the really exciting thing there as well is that advertising is in some ways the largest commercial application for art. Like Andy Warhol, his famous artworks are all advertisements, right? Like Campbell Soup, things like this. And so like his silk screens. And so there's always been this very big intersection between art and advertising. And growing up the son of an artist, there was a lot of work that my dad did for advertising purposes for brands. And so I'd always been pretty close to kind of the creative element of advertising for some time through that. And so therefore I immediately saw the business application of AI in advertising. And because of this, this interest in generative art, and then art being a big part of the advertising industry, advertising industry celebrates creativity and storytelling, and so that was really kind of what got me into AI and advertising, is this intersection of AI, artificial intelligence, and art. And then separately, my grandfather worked at IBM, and I grew up in this kind of very technological family, learned programming early and competed in robotics competitions as a kid. And so, I'd always been very super impressed by Moore's Law as a kid. Like, just, you kind of growing up, with where you have family members who work in technology, you just kind of intuit Moore's Law. Like, every 6 months, the world does dynamically change. And it does feel like that today, but that was also true several decades ago as well, with the personal computer revolution and the internet revolution. And so just the excitement of being at the forefront of societal change by being involved in technology was the other kind of thing that got me into programming, got me into computer science, and then got me into AI. And so those are really the two things. Is like, growing up, I had developed this intuition in some ways of the exponential rate. I mean, it's impossible to develop this, humans are really difficult. It's really hard for humans to develop an intuition for exponential change, but, kind of getting a sense of the exponential rate which AI or technology improves, plus see how quickly the generative AI space was going. That's what got me really excited about, this application of generative AI.
Super interesting. I don't think I've heard of a more kind of organic background, I guess, that would lead somebody into what they're doing today. That's really interesting. One of the ways that I like to start some of these podcasts, also because I think most people are so focused on kind of what's going on today, because there's so much going on, right? Like, I think we're both very focused on artificial intelligence, and we see these changes, but, there's also many other emerging technologies that are having big impacts. Where I like to start is maybe a little bit of, not like a history background, but a little bit of a background on like advertising, if you will. Now, we don't need to go back, like 100 years or 1,000 years or anything like that, but social media, from my perspective, and I think most people's perspective, has really dominated, as well as Google Ads, like the advertising space over the last, what would you say, 10 years, 15 years, something like that. How do you see, how was that transition? Like, were you involved in this? Were you paying attention to this? Like, from traditional advertising, the yellow pages, or banners on the side of the street, or TV and radio advertising. Like, how has social media's role really kind of changed the face of advertising, if you will, before we dive into all the cool AI stuff and how it's going to change?
Sure, absolutely. And I think people also say that advertising is one of the oldest professions in humanity. I mean, humans are always advertising. When I'm having a conversation with you, in some ways I'm advertising my knowledge, right? And I'm advertising myself. And people say that some of the early artwork in these cave paintings were essentially advertisements about the knowledge that that a tribe may have, or something like this. And so advertising is, the moment humans can communicate, they were advertising. They're always selling, right? And so and advertising is kind of that at scale. I would say, like, modern advertisements, I think there are some seminal moments. You have Edward Bernays and the book Propaganda, about like a decade ago, where he talks about kind of a certain form of advertising industrial complex, where it's about, how do you persuade people with, to communicate ideas regarding products or other things. And that's kind of where you start seeing the professionalization, I would say, more kind of in this very modern, industrialized way for the industry. Kind of like you were seeing this in other kind of manufacturing industries, for example. You see that professionalization in the kind of turn of the 20th century. And then you have Ogilvy, you have in mid-century, you have this kind of the rise of direct response advertising. And direct response advertising today, we think of like, click-through rates for an ad, but before that, there were things like mail. And so you can send somebody mail and you can see, did they, respond to the mail, or do they not respond to the mail? And based on that, you can run an A/B test. Well, maybe this mail is more effective than this other mail because this mail resulted in more catalog sales, or, sales to the catalog. And so, and then, you mentioned yellow pages as well. Like, not even the website, but even like the old school, like phone books, and you had advertisements there, you had advertisements in newspapers. So yeah, it's advertising has always been kind of at the very forefront of human communication, because advertising is so linked to human communication. And so it oftentimes happens that when there's a new communication technology, it's oftentimes sponsored initially by advertisers. So the earliest radio ads, the earliest radio shows were called soap operas, and they were called soap operas because they were there to help sell soap. The television shows were called soap operas because they were there. It was a Dove actually was the one that sponsored a lot of the initial TV shows. And in fact, you can say that, like, a lot of these sitcoms of the mid-century were also part advertisements on, like, kitchenware and all the different goodies that your house is lacking. You watch a sitcom and you see somebody using a washing machine. You're like, well, I need a washing machine. And so it's and then there's the early kind of satellite communication, funded largely by advertising-based companies. I mean, you can say that Turner Broadcasting, right? That CNN, things like this. I mean, Ted Turner, his family ran a billboard advertisement. His dad ran a billboard advertisements. He in Georgia, I believe. And so he comes from an advertising family. He's also one of the first people to launch satellite television communications. And so so clearly an advertising business fueling a new next generation of communication. And so therefore, with the internet as well, the early internet, after it was funded by the government, was funded by advertisers, right? The earliest, ads were banner, all the earliest web pages were financed by banner ads. And so when social media came along, I think the thing that social media changed in terms of advertising was just direct, like, personalized targeting. So the innovation that Facebook provided was connecting real identity to a persona online. So before Facebook, mostly people were anonymous. After Facebook, everybody had a kind of a real identity. And that was very revolutionary for advertisers because now I can target you on a personalized basis. I would say that Facebook kind of really invented personalized advertising in that sense. And I think, with generative AI, that is now being put in, further kind of, acceleration because now the creative itself can be generated on a personalized basis.
Very interesting. Obviously, many questions come from this, but I think the one that I always go back to, and especially as you mentioned, Edward Bernays, there's this idea of advertising as kind of changing, or maybe manipulating is too rough of a word, but it's this influence of human behavior, right? So if some of these early ads on TV were showing no dishwashers and all of these kind of appliances that you can buy at home that most people didn't have, well, that's setting kind of like a new state, like a bar of status in the society, and therefore everybody has to have it. And advertising is, changing society to a certain extent, while obviously making some companies money. How do you see, obviously with all the kind of maybe negative connotation that like Facebook has received over the last couple of years, I'm thinking Cambridge Analytica in particular, and there was this great documentary, and I can't remember its name, but it was showing how, the kind of early algorithms are trying to, I guess, manipulate or change people's perspective by giving them certain amount of information. Now, I don't think this is all advertising. This is, certainly like misinformation and, maybe government bots and things like that are pushing these ideas. But obviously advertising is part of this bucket of goods. And it's for good and for bad. I don't want to just make this as negative, but can you maybe unravel this or share your ideas on and thoughts on this?
Well, gosh, I think, anything that you agree with is the truth, and anything you don't agree with is misinformation, right? And
right.
And anything that you agree with is information, and everything you don't agree with is propaganda. So, I think there's always a battle for people for influencing people, right? I mean, you're constantly being influenced by your friends, your family, your environment, your coworkers, the media, the news you read. I mean, everyone's battling for influence for, the way you view the world and the way you make decisions. And, we don't live in a vacuum. Every interaction we have is, subconsciously altering us to think a certain way or think a different way. And that, and so I think it's easy to say, yes, like this is misinformation and this is truth, or this is propaganda and this is truth. But the reality is that I think people are smart. People see, people can make their own decisions. They get a lot of information from different places and they can make their own decisions. So, I don't think this is necessarily bad. And more information, I mean, I think you have to trust in the intelligence of people. And I think effective advertising, truly effective advertising is a net positive. It's a plus in the sense that it's communicating value to you and it makes sense to you, and then you buy that product and it makes your life better. And like it's up to the end, ultimately to the end consumer to make that decision. But I do think humans have agency. I mean, I like, and so the idea, you're kind of, it's this dialectic where it's like, humans have no agency and you're just kind of being programmed by, I don't know, some, name the ulterior thing. And then, or people have free agency and they're making independent decisions based on, the information that they have access to. And I think that is more of the reality. And I think advertisers, what they do is they, communicate certain types of information to consumers regarding the value of a product. And honestly, I think it's a net positive for society. I think advertising, because, I think many of us have had our lives improved by products that we've learned through ads, right? That is, because you bought a washing machine, you don't need to spend 5 hours a day washing your clothes by hand. Because you wash a dishwasher, you don't need to spend, hours washing, your plates by hand. That is probably benefited your life, right? And so that advertisement was not manipulative or anything like this. It communicated a value prop, and then the consumer made a decision whether they thought that value prop made sense to them or not. And so that's really what I think advertisements is it helps businesses have a chance to communicate their value prop to a consumer. And ultimately it's up to that consumer to decide whether it makes that value prop make sense to them or not, and whether they want to end up buying the product. It also creates jobs. I mean, advertisements create jobs, not only within the advertising industry, but for new companies. I mean, if you have a new company, you have a new product, you have a new idea, how are you going to get customers? You can talk with your friends, but that's only a certain size market. I mean, at some point you're going to have to scale your business. And the easiest and most straightforward way of doing that is through advertisements. And so in that, and then because of that, and if it's a good product, your business will grow and they'll create jobs. And then it'll also benefit the lives of consumers. And so, I think that's kind of a very important societal function that advertisements play, is it creates jobs. It informs, consumers about new products that can benefit their lives. And it just increases general information efficiency in the market. And usually if the product is terrible and it doesn't work, then people will quickly, that word will get around and that business won't be in business for much longer. And likewise, if that product actually does benefit people's lives, then, that's creating new jobs and improves people's lives. And so, that's what I believe about the advertising industry. Now there are other uses of this technology for other, non-business reasons and, political reasons or whatnot. And, we don't work with political organizations. We work with just businesses and helping businesses grow. So, but, I genuinely, people hire customers that use our product and we work with have very interesting and unique products that do benefit people, whether it's the price or the quality or, the unique offering. And I think it does benefit consumers. We work with it because we do think these are great products and we want to see these businesses grow.
No, this is, I really appreciate this response. I think, one, I agree with you, but also with this podcast, because I talk to so many different people about artificial intelligence and, all these emerging technologies' impact on society, there is actually a lot of concern or skepticism or worry about, the future or like what's already been happening. So I think maybe my mind has maybe been a little bit biased or skewed by having these conversations that sometimes focus on like the worst case scenario, if you will. But if we're speaking just about businesses, I mean, I also have a small and growing digital marketing department, if you will, in my business. So, I am very invested in my clients' ability to get the word out to their potential clients. And like, I know these clients, they're doing great work. They do, they do benefit their customers. So I think it's refreshing, I think is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And in a world without advertising is a world where there's no new products in some ways, right? Like you just have stasis because you just have the incumbent products, have all the money, spend it on, buying customers in other ways. And you won't have opportunities for new products to come to market and say, hey, we're better than this incumbent. And here's our case. And I think that's what an advertisement is. It's a platform that lets these businesses make their case as to why their product is better than the incumbent, or why their product is, potentially solves a new problem, or a problem, solves a problem in a new way that people hadn't imagined before. And so I think in some ways it's also democratizing. It's like, and it gives new businesses a chance to grow. It increases competition that benefits consumers. I think a world without advertising is a world, more stagnation, less competition, and less vibrancy.
Yeah. Oh, that's I haven't heard it being put that way, but I can completely agree with that sentiment. Very interesting. So let's go back to the technology specifically. So obviously social media, digital marketing, Google Ads, all this sort of stuff. Even podcasting. Although I don't have ads on my podcast yet. Maybe one day. It's from my perspective, it has drastically increased the scale of which businesses can get their word out of their new products, of their businesses, of their services, etc. You alluded to the fact that AI has been kind of like a personalization game changer, if you will. It's enabling businesses to target specific individuals. I think that's like one, maybe the main thing that, and I like to classify artificial intelligence is kind of like earlier or traditional AI versus what we're seeing now, which is all the hype is around generative AI. Are there any other things that, I guess you could say traditional artificial intelligence changed with regards to advertising and the capabilities of businesses to advertise properly?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the really exciting things about AI is it gives consumers, it's like also more data privacy, actually, weirdly enough, right? Because people say that like targeted ads is anti-privacy, right? It's like, because you're sharing all this data with the ad platforms and then they're targeting you these ads. But actually, now what we're seeing, and this is, I think this is actually kind of interesting, change of perception even for a company like Meta, right? With their release these open source models, is it actually they're now the privacy company.
Yeah.
Well, Meta is actually the pro-privacy company because, these cloud companies are not the privacy companies because, the cloud companies, you have to send data to cloud provider. With Meta, you can build your own DIY, build your own model and build your own applications yourself and keep your data. And so, now you can live in a world where, you can build a calendar app and it lives just on your laptop or on your phone, and it never sends data to any third party. You can build an email you can build like an email tool yourself that just lives, or you can download one and it just lives on your own end device and not ever send data other than the ones that you want to send. You can build your own workout app or your health app, and all that data can stay within your device through the power of AI, because all the calculations and computations and inferencing can be done on device at the edge without sending data to the cloud. And so I think there's a really interesting question regarding, does data go to the AI or does AI go to the data? Or in some ways it's like, is the end state like this godlike AI where there's one AI that has all the data, or is it actually like, millions of small AIs on everyone's devices, just, utilizing people's data and keeping that data, secure. And so, and then where does advertising fit into this, right? I mean, advertising, back to the first point, is it's one of the oldest industries, right? I mean, as the moment people are communicating, their business, selling their business, communicating the values of the business, that's advertising. So, the person who was living in the village, communicating that they have, that they help make shoes, and they're putting, a sign that says, "I make shoes." Well, that's an ad. And so advertising is not going away. People will always be communicating the values of the business with, the state-of-the-art technology, whatever that technology is. And I think with AI in particular, what it does today is this has been our mission, is it democratizes advertising. It lets anybody be able to launch effective ads at scale without having to work with a very expensive, creative agency or advertising agency. You have these big holding companies that dominate the space, and also create content that is effective and personalized. And so, I think what AI does for advertising is it lets anybody with a good idea or a good product go to market effectively at scale, and it lowers the barriers to that.
Could you touch a little bit further on the content creation side? I mean, like as somebody who uses ChatGPT maybe 10 times a day at minimum, right? I love using the Mid-Journey, for instance. Even ChatGPT has an image generation tool now. Content generation, I think, has just gotten so much easier over the last, it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years now since ChatGPT came out. You're talking about the ability for almost anybody now to create their own content, copy, etc. Are you seeing your clients do that, or are they still, how should I say, in the framework, in the mind set of an organization like a digital marketing agency or an advertising agency does that for me?
Yeah. I think we're seeing more and more DIY advertising. People are creating their own content and launching that content on socials and using tools to generate that content. I think there's several things. So for the SMB side, I think what tools like ChatGPT lack is, number one, context related to your brand, but also context related to the performance of your historical ads or your marketing or your website. It doesn't, is not plugged into conversion data on your website or your ads. It doesn't have that learning feedback capability. It also doesn't have that distribution capability. You can't then launch that ad to, a bunch of ad platforms and run them. And then optimize the running of the ads, distribution. And so that's where we come in is, we're used to state-of-the-art LLMs, but we also build the whole workflow of analytics and distribution in brand management and fine-tuning that doesn't necessarily exist, in kind of this out-of-box, ChatGPT product, for example. So that's on the SMB side, the value. I think when it comes to large enterprises, we're still not seeing complete adoption of AI in terms of creative yet. And I think partly this is due to legal concerns, IP concerns. I mean, if you're a big brand, you don't want an SMB sued because, some element background of the image running as an ad actually looks similar to somebody else, some artwork that somebody else made. And this artist sues this big company saying, hey, you're monetizing artwork and, I should get a share of the commerce you're making from my artwork. And they just, it's too vague right now, the legal elements of like what like is copyrightable and what's not copyrightable. And so there's a little bit of trepidation in terms of utilizing it at scale so far by big enterprise, but I think these issues are going to get resolved, and they're using, obviously the big enterprise are using them for internal ideation purposes.
Okay. One of the things that I'm noticing in my kind of everyday work here is, so a lot of the clients, I'm outside of Vancouver. I'm not in the city. So a lot of my clients are maybe sometimes a little bit more rural, and they're maybe not the most technologically literate people, which is great because I am, and I can help them that. But they're not utilizing ChatGPT or some of these tools to help with their brand creation. Now, there's also small and medium enterprises. I think you're dealing with some much larger players. So I guess my question to you is, when considering branding to the world, are these organizations thinking more of like ChatGPT or these AI tools as kind of a co-pilot, like helping us create that brand? Or is it still a lot of humans in a boardroom or in some room brainstorming for several days, smoking, drinking coffee, and thinking about all the things that they need to in order to create the brand and the message that they want to put out there? In your experience, how much has AI infiltrated what I would think is one of the more creative aspects of a business, and that's generating the right kind of brand that people are going to resonate with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in co-pilot right now. So kind of the smoke-filled Mad Men world is probably, I think, that's a bit more in the past, I would say. And I think today it is very much, whether it was Gen AI or, before that it was, related to analytics and things like this, and big data. I mean, advertisers have always been, working with AI of some, especially in the past decade, they have been working with AI of some form to create more effective, campaigns and ultimately do better for the businesses and the products that they're selling. And so, I think it is very much a co-pilot. I mean, it's ways if you ran a Google ad or a Facebook ad, a decade ago, that was in some ways a co-pilot situation because you're trusting an AI to deliver the ads to the right people. I think what the world we're entering in very soon is not even co-pilot, but potentially autopilot. Yeah, because potentially autopilot is more effective than copilot. And you're seeing this already in worlds like cybersecurity, where an autopilot cybersecurity world is actually more secure than a copilot cybersecurity world, because where do most vulnerabilities come from? They come from humans. And so actually, if you can remove the surface area of humans, you actually have a more secure application, in theory. And I think, potentially also when it comes, there may be similar dynamics soon in advertising as well, as where you realize that, an ad that's running at, at scale and real time, personalizing the content, to a given individual. You can just if you just let that AI loose, it operates much more efficiently and effectively than if you had someone human in the loop trying kind of slowing things down and having it be less effective. And so, I think the world is not, human versus Copilot, but actually I would say now increasingly Copilot versus full self-driving. And I think we're actually potentially going from Copilot to potentially more and more full self-driving.
Crazy. The first 100 episodes of this podcast was focused on technological unemployment. So this point is very near and dear to my heart and mind, you can imagine. So if there's this shift towards autopilot, specifically with advertising, I can't remember the numbers, but I know that the advertising industry is a massive industry that employs millions of people across the world. How do you see this? And of course, this like AI revolution, this autopilot revolution is going to take some time. It's not going to be adopted by everybody. Maybe some of your clients that are maybe a little bit larger and have the capital to implement some of these AI tools really quickly. I would think that they're going to adopt these autopilot advertisers pretty quickly. How do you see the advertising industry as a whole kind of transforming over the next couple of years if there's more and more of these AI tools doing the jobs of a lot of advertisers?
It's the role of the human will change from being a human in the loop to a human babysitting the algorithm, or a human kind of overseeing the algorithms. Humans making decisions that algorithms have trouble making. At some point a decision does get escalated to a human regarding probably things related to brand integrity and brand safety and messaging and things along those lines. So, I mean, what we like to say is, AI isn't going to replace you. A human using AI will replace you.
Yeah.
So ultimately there will be a human using this AI, managing this AI, running this AI that does this work. Now, but yes, this human will be able to do, as an individual, be a lot more productive with this technology. And now the question is, advertising is a massive industry. It's a trillion, essentially it's a $1 trillion global industry every year. And we live in a world where 55% of marketing budgets are wasted on ineffective content. So there's a lot of waste happening. So the question is, well, okay, let's say $1 trillion is now spent more effectively. So it's not 55% waste, but 10% waste or 5% waste, or because the ads are more personalized and effective and relevant to the end consumer. Well, then actually, what does that mean? That means more sales for businesses, more growth. Those companies will be able to hire more people because those companies will be more profitable, and they'll be growing. And so maybe you won't see, maybe you'll see more jobs in other areas because advertising is now more effective. And and so it's the economy is a strange thing where you have bottlenecks in one area, and then they kind of get solved, and then it shows up in a different area, right? And it's this intricate, complex machine. And so it's hard to tell, but I don't think you're going to just see decimational jobs or anything like this. I think, because I actually don't think I just think there'll always be entrepreneurs who come up with new ideas for ways of creating value. So who would have thought, who would have thought, 2 decades ago that, being, who would have thought before the iPhone that podcasting was a thing, right? I mean, podcasting.
I've used that example multiple times. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
But it's not, digital marketing, we're talking about, replacing digital marketers. Well, digital marketers didn't exist as a job until, at least a couple of decades ago. So even that, it's just being a job that was literally just created potentially, right? And so there's always new jobs being built with new technologies. So there will be new types of jobs created because of generative AI that we can't imagine today. It'll be the job of the entrepreneur of the future, or the of the businesses of the creative businesses of today to come up with those new jobs. But humans are very smart and very valuable, and I think there will always be creative ways, creative entrepreneurs that come up with new jobs that can utilize human potential more effectively. And there will always be areas, by the way, I think the humans will be better than AI at. AI is not just a complete, it's not, it's very different from humans. It's not, it is not a human.
Yeah.
And so like there'll be things that humans will be better than that those will be probably what new jobs will be created. And then there'll also be kind of intricacies even regarding the existing AI systems that will require new types of engineering or new types of management or new types of analytics or new types of machine learning model creation or data. And so like I'm confident that there'll be new classes of jobs created and that there'll be entrepreneurs that take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, no, I agree with that fully. And I'm so happy that you said, the people that will be replaced are the people that are not using artificial intelligence, and they'll be replaced by people that are using artificial intelligence, right? I think the skill change is maybe one of the main messages that the podcast talks about with relation to technological unemployment and upskilling. Like you need to start thinking about how to utilize this tool. We don't have too much time left. I do want to give you an opportunity to talk more about your work, and maybe talk a little bit about how you are transforming, part of the industry with the work that you do, but also like how the AI that you're implementing is benefiting your clients, especially, as they're larger clients. I think that this would be something interesting for me as well.
Absolutely. So historically, marketing departments and design departments were operating in silos. So you have the design team, they create content kind of in a vacuum, they throw it over to the marketing team runs it. It's the design team isn't necessarily creating content, particularly in a data-driven way, and the marketing team is kind of stuck with the content that's thrown to them. But, I think 55 to 75% of performance of sales of advertising campaign is based on the ad creative, right? Which makes sense, right? We all remember the iconic ads, and, those iconic ads got the word of mouth and, probably, convinced a lot of people to buy a product. And so the creative is the most important thing in an advertising campaign. And yet the marketer has very limited control of the creative. Like they're kind of stuck with whatever, they can come up with an idea, but like they're kind of stuck with whatever creative is given to them by the design team, or the creative department. And so it's a very inefficient system. This is a system that even today, 55% of marketing budgets are being wasted on ineffective content, even though, 55 to 75% of performance is based on the creative. And so what our tool does is our tool analyzes the performance of creative. It figures out what is the persuasion tactics, in terms of video, what is the first, like the video hook that's driving potentially increased view through rates, and high view percentages. What are the elements within, the image or the video in the early few seconds that's increasing view through rates or click through rates. And definitely one of the features that are driving return on ad spend, driving sales, driving conversions for the customer. That data is then utilized to generate new concepts of advertisements that then the creative teams can use to create more effective content. And that then benefits also the marketer, because the marketer can now launch creative that will be performed better, be more personalized, and launch more creative as well, because the AI not only creates more effective content but also creates more content, and it creates more content potentially more better and more cheaply and more effectively than photo shoots or some of the longer processes that takes. On the generation side, our tool fine-tunes on the brand model. So it fine-tunes on the brand voice, the brand style, the way that the brand talks. If there was if there was like a legacy or history of data there, and it also fine-tunes on the product, on the product images themselves and the style of that brand, like the image style. And so there's a couple of fine-tuning processes down there. It's used to then generate brand safe, brand aligned, hyper-realistic product photos in the style of that brand. And it generates that, within minutes, versus, doing that through some kind of several week process of doing a video shoot or a photo shoot. And so you can run content more faster in real time, more relevant to the consumer. You have faster feedback and iteration speeds due to the generative AI. And then ultimately this benefits the brand because they get more sales. And so that's our workflow tool is brand management, scaled creative, and then insights to generate on-brand advertisements that help businesses grow.
Great. And I also think that one of the key things that you said was the speed at which you're able to do this. If I'm kind of having my thumb on the pulse of civilization, if you will, with TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Reels and things like that, I think that the attention span of the average person is shrinking day by day. So the speed at which organizations can jump onto a trend or still remain relevant to, whether it's a trending topic or something like that, I think is going to be more and more and more essential. Because if you come out with, you go through that whole traditional process of a photo shoot or a video shoot or whatever, and it might take you a month or 2 months to create something. And by the time you pump it out, well, there's already 3 trends that have surpassed the one that you're talking about, and all that money spent is kind of wasted.
I mean, gosh, it's not even like that. I mean, there's that, but there's whole new mediums of storytelling being created. So, a trend we were seeing recently in terms of video ads and is, you actually have split screens. So you have like a product demo explanation on the top, and then you have some equivalent of a fidget spinner on the bottom. One of those like ADHD like animations. So maybe it might be like a character like running through a maze, or maybe like somebody like cutting sand, or coloring a color book. Those things, like just, it's kind of like trance inducing. Like you look at these things and you kind of stare at it and you're like, wow, where did my 3 minutes go? I just stared at this like animation for 3 minutes.
Right.
And so you have a combination of that on the bottom plus like a product explanation on top. So you kind of get the person's kind of to watch through the entire 10, 30-second video where the company explains the value props, but keeps the viewer kind of, not scrolling to the next thing. And so those things, gosh, it's not even a matter of doing a photo shoot or not. I mean, you'd have to, historically do a lot of other things to create a piece of content like that. And so, see those kinds of trends early, and then generate content in that style to stay up to date in terms of the competition for attention. I think the other key thing is that advertising is a constantly evolving industry because there's always competition for attention. And so whatever is, the cutting edge today is now, is like table stakes. The next week, and so people are always trying to find new innovative ways of capturing and retaining attention, because that is really the scarce asset in this world. It's human attention, and so and so that's what we help our businesses do. Is it's actually quite funny because one of the seminal papers in AI that invented, kind of introduced transformers, which is kind of this revolutionary technology that made large language models effective. Is called attention is all you need. And it talks about this attention mechanism, which is essentially creates these highways that like cut through the large language model to so that the learnings don't get lost as you increase the density of these neural networks. Because this is really how you get, these trillion parameter neural networks be effective, because it used to be that the bigger you made these neural networks, the less effective they were because there was just so much noise, but you had this attention mechanism that would like kind of let key learnings kind of pass through layers of the neural nets. But what's really interesting is that it's true for society as well, is in business as well, is attention is all you need. We live in an attention-driven economy. The stocks with the best attention perform the best generally, I think, and products with the most attention get the most sales, and the candidates with the most attention win the most votes. And so I think, in a world where everything is a competition for attention, everyone needs to stay at the cutting edge of the tools that let them compete, and generative AI is just part of that. Generative applications like Omneky are part of that toolkit for advertisers.
Okay, I see our time is almost up here. Maybe it's a final question. And we could have an entire podcast about this. So we've talked a little bit about the history, about social media, now AI. What's next? How is advertising going to change? I've had a lot of guests come on to talk about artificial reality or virtual reality. Like this was discussed a lot over the last couple of years as like the next step of the new medium for advertisers. It seems to be down in a bit of a winter right now. What are your thoughts? Maybe not just on that, but kind of what's next in advertising after AI kind of takes over.
I mean, AI taking, quote unquote AI taking over, whatever, it's a kind of a loaded phrase in of itself.
Yeah.
It's like the internet taking over, I guess, personal computers taking over. I mean, but within the area of AI, I would break it up into the next big thing is agents, AI agents. We're now, today you can use AI, you can prompt AI and it'll generate content or inference, provide some kind of guesswork. But, even now actually-ish, and, you have some companies announce big agent-based products. I think, today as, September 18th, on Monday we had Salesforce announce Agentforce, which is their agent-based, enterprise stack from call centers and chatbots to sales and CS. And so that is going to be the next big thing, I think, is like not only generative, but also goal directed. So you can give it a goal, achieve this task. And then the agent has agency, and it goes and achieves that task, and it comes up with its own, steps for how to solve that problem. And then it maybe spawns new AI that goes and accomplishes those mini tasks, and then it comes back, and it's kind of this kind of hive mind swarm it generates to go and kind of accomplish a certain task. And I think that's going to be, that's current next big thing, I think, in AI is agents, is AI agents. And then I think, the longer trend is just the human hive mind. I think I'm reading this book called Acceleranda, and it talks about the humanity, kind of the brain meld of humanity, with AI and the internet, creating more and more levels of they describe this in terms of MIPS, a million instructions per second. But human brain, maybe probably the collective human intelligence today has a certain, MIPS. So you can say, I guess, certain compute power, right? The computational power of all human brain power, where plus the internet, collectively has certain MIPS. But then, AI will increase that by 100-fold. And then, all these new subsequent technologies will increase it, especially if you can create, replicas of your brain, or you can augment your brain, and you can see a million-fold increase in human computational ability and human MIPS, or humanity's and collective intelligence. And as we, expand our consciousness and expand our intelligence and expand our power, our computational power, we'll be able to solve more and more power, more and more problems. And in this world, humanity has totally taken over the solar system. They've created Dyson spheres around the sun. They've, extracted resources from various planets. They've turned it into a multi-solar multi-solar system species. And it is through this combination of human brain power and wetware with the increased capabilities of machines, and kind of that merging, both with our intelligence with each other and also with our intelligence with this kind of with computers. And so I think that's that's a very exciting future. I mean, as we increase the human computational power of humanity, we'll be able to solve more and more ambitious problems, and then there's no limit in terms of the growth of what's possible. And so I'm very excited about the future.
As I am, and I think as anybody should be, that is actually paying attention to what's going on and what is absolutely possible. Hikari, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It was really great to talk to you. And I love that last little bit where, kind of the future of humanity is kind of spelled out for all of us, because this is something that I think about a lot. So it's great to have a guest come on and hopefully blow somebody's mind away in the audience that hasn't thought about that before. But thanks again. I'll of course have your websites, your website up on the show notes, and your LinkedIn. Is there any other place that you want people to follow what you're doing or reach out to you?
Yeah, follow us on social media, Omneky, @Omneky on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. You can follow me at Hikari Senju at Twitter, and also feel free to send me an email at hikari@omneky.com. I'm really, really looking forward to, discussing more with your listeners as well regarding what we're building and what the future holds.
Looking forward to it. Great. Well, thanks again for your time, and I'll have to have you back on when we start to integrate with AI and see how that's gonna.
Oh, I mean, you can say we already are.
Yeah.
AI, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you use a smartphone, right? I mean, that's full of AI. And so, but it's just acceleration of that.
Yeah. No further. Completely agree. Thanks again, Hikari.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.